Hello boys and girls, welcome to this another lesson in mathematics. Today we'll be looking at fractions. Now let's take a look at our objectives to see what we would like to accomplish for this lesson. By the end of the lesson, pupils will be able to identify the numerator and denominator of a fraction, name one or more parts of the same objects using halves through tenths, place in serial order fractions with the same numerator. Now, let's begin by looking at what is a fraction. What is a fraction? When something is shared, divided, or broken up into two or more parts, each part is called a fraction. For example, the shape below is shared into two equal parts. One of the two parts is shaded and is written as shown here. One shaded part out of two parts. A fraction is made up of two parts, the numerator and the denominator. Now we'll be looking at the numerator to find out which part of the fraction it is. The numerator is the top number of a fraction. It indicates the number of parts being discussed. For example, here we have one part that is shaded out of two parts. The one here indicates the numerator. Let's now look at the denominator. The denominator is the bottom number of a fraction. It indicates how many equal parts a whole is divided into. Here we have our circle that is divided in two equal parts. Hence, the denominator is 2. Let's now look at the line that separates the numerator and the denominator. It is called the fraction bar. The fraction bar is the line that separates the numerator from the denominator. For example, here we have the fraction 3/4. The fraction bar is that line that separates the numerator from the denominator. Now that we have looked at the different parts of the fraction, let's see if you can now identify the numerator and the denominator in these examples that I'll be showing you. Can you identify the numerator? Can you identify the denominator? Very good. I hope you got those correct. Let's move on. Now we'll be moving on to identifying fractions half through tenths. Let's look at the first example. How many equal parts is the circle divided into? The circle is divided into two equal parts. How many of these parts are shaded? One part of the two parts is shaded. Therefore, half of the circle is shaded. Let's look at another example here. How many equal parts is the circle divided into? The circle is divided into three equal parts. How many of these parts are shaded? One part of the three parts is shaded. Therefore, a third of the circle is shaded. How many equal parts is the circle divided into? The circle is divided into four equal parts. How many of these parts are not shaded? One part of the four parts is not shaded. Therefore, a quarter of the circle is not shaded. How many equal parts is the circle divided into? The circle is divided into 5 equal parts. How many of these parts are not shaded? 2 parts of the 5 parts are not shaded. Therefore, 2/5 of the circle is not shaded. Now that we have identified fractions of shapes, we'll be now looking at identifying fractions of a set. What fraction of the mangoes is ripe? Look closely at the mangoes. There are 6 mangoes, and 3 of the 6 mangoes are ripe. Therefore, 3/6 of the mangoes is ripe. Or we could say half of the mangoes is ripe. What fraction of these birds have the colors black, green, and gold? There are 8 birds. 3 of the 8 birds have the colors black, green, and gold. Therefore, 3/8 of the birds have the colors black, green, and gold. Now that we have completed looking at fractions of the set, we'll be now using our fraction tiles to compare fractions. Let's take a look at the fraction tiles. These are our fraction tiles. We'll be using these to compare fractions. The large tile at the top represents 1 whole. If you look closely, you'll notice that the denominator for each tile as you go down gets larger. If you notice here, the tiles can be separated. At the top, there is 1 whole. Look closely at the denominator for each of the tile. You will note, what do you notice about the size of the tile as the denominator gets larger? Look at a half, and look at a third. Look at a quarter. What do you notice about the size of those tiles as the denominator gets larger? You will notice that the larger the denominator, the smaller the fraction tile is. Did you notice that? Take a look again. Remember now, we have said earlier that the denominator represents the number of parts the whole is shared into. Now, boys and girls, on screen you'll notice we have a fraction tile representing 1 whole. We're now going to find out how many halves, thirds, quarters, and fifths we can get that is equal to this 1 whole. Let's go ahead and look. 1 half, 2 halves. So it takes 2 halves to make 1 whole. Let's look at how many thirds we can get out of a whole. 1/3, 2/3, 3/3 make 1 whole. Let's look at the quarters. 1 quarter, another quarter, 3 quarters, 4 quarters make 1 whole. How many fifths do you think can make a whole? Let's pay attention and see if we can find out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fifths. So we have 5 fifths that will give us 1 whole. Now we will be arranging fractions from largest to smallest. 1 whole, half, a third, a quarter, 1/5. Here we have arranged the tiles showing largest pieces to the smallest pieces. Remember what we said about the denominator? The larger the denominator, the smaller the fraction will be. Do you think you can arrange the fraction tiles from the smallest to the largest? I'm sure you can. Let's do that together. 1/5, a quarter, a third, a half, 1 whole. Here we have the tiles arranged showing from the smallest pieces to the largest. Now, boys and girls, I want you to look carefully, and can you identify the fractions that will be shown? Let's take a look. What fraction of the rectangle is shaded? What fraction of the flags have flag sticks? Can you tell what fractions of the balloons do not have any strings? What fraction of the marbles are red? Can you tell the fraction of the marbles that are yellow? What fractions of the stars are blue? Can you tell the fraction of the stars that are orange? Well done, boys and girls. I know you got those correct. Now I'm going to give you a little activity. Let's take a look at it. Order these fractions from smallest to largest. I'll give you a few seconds to do this. Then we're going to look at the answers. Here we have the answers. If you notice, all these fractions have 1 as a numerator. These fractions are referred to as unit fractions. Now, if you look at the denominator, the larger the denominator, the smaller the fraction is. So 1/9 is the smallest of all these fractions shown here. I know you did well. Tap yourselves on the shoulder. I know you're understanding fractions. Now let's take a peek at our objectives to see if we achieved what we set out to do. Did we identify the numerator and denominator of a fraction? Yes, we did. Did we name one or more parts of the same objects using halves through tenths? I'm sure we did. Did we place in serial order fractions with the same numerator? Of course we did. Have fun doing fraction, boys and girls, and see you next time around.